system. But again, how do you change the Filipino, Juan de la Cruz, who has a requirement for money?
I have an idea, but you start. You start first from where you sit.
Okay, from where I sit, as you said, it's a culture. I really am a believer that if we want change to happen in this country, it should come from the countryside. Like, I have a job, I live in a corporate world here. I went home to my province and because I want to take part in making that change happen. You see, when you go to the countryside, 80 to 90% of everyone's job depends on government. So you are not free to express your freedom of choice. If you don't follow, they will threaten your job, they will threaten your wife, they will transfer you to the ends of wherever. So
real harassment.
That is the real truth
real
of
life.
it all. So in order to get these people to be brave enough to stand up and make that choice heard, no? So you have to be able to stimulate that and be the inspiration for this to happen. Secondly, they are not as wealthy, they're not as privileged as those in the urban centers. So, as I've said, first time they've seen a 1,000 peso bill. We don't have media. In my province, our source of media, for example, the radio, in one area you pick it up from Mindanao, in one area you pick it up from Cebu. In the center of town, it's just one radio station, which is very limited. So, to sustain a piece of news in one province is like near impossible on the same day. There is no broadsheet because we have one and that it's very difficult to get it around because we are closer to Tacloban in some areas than we are to the capital city. When you look at the broadsheet daily, the big dailies, it comes 2 days, a day later. So our news is yesterday's news. And all the more when you look at television, not everyone can afford because it's in the mountains. You can only do so when you're on cable. And if you don't have cable, then it's as good as
that's it.
All we get are the nice lunchtime hosts.
This is very prime for what we call the Ampatuan situation.
Correct.
This is fantastic for what you call a drug lord or what you call an oligarch to actually take control of an area and keep it like that so that you keep them uneducated and you keep them low and you maintain. And you just benefit by making more money out of the national government. Ganun ang mangyayari yan. So, anong solusyon natin dyan? Should we allow the majority, which is what we call the democracy that we are in, or should we change into what we call, well, the proposals today that stand in government is charter change. I don't know if that would be the solution, but maybe charter change to open it up, but then again, to bring about a benevolent leader. Is there such a thing? Is there one Filipino out there that's willing to actually say in true form, mahal niya ang taong bayan at yung bayan?
And he becomes a traitor to his own kind or clan, you know.
The minute a leader becomes absolute, the corruption becomes absolute as well, as we can see, which is all theories. Now, let's look at China. 1.2, 1.4 billion people, they closed themselves to the world. They went through many political theories. They went through different norms in the last 50 years alone.
They went through a national catharsis as well.
Yes, you know? So there you go. The thesis, antithesis, and whatnot, it's all come out. But today, because of the strong arm rule, everyone's being herded. Sure, they're still poor, and there's still those that are the minoritized, if that's the right word.
And there are still 350 million Chinese who go on famine.
Yes, but likewise, the most number of millionaires in the world, the fastest growing, the most progressive, better than they were 15, 20 years ago. So obviously, capitalism is correct. However, as Lee Kuan Yew put it, when he did come and he rationalized the state of dictatorialship on behalf of Marcos, he said, ang aso, pag hindi sumunod, sinisipa, pinapalo. Kaya ang aso, you treat parang tao, ganun din. Pag ayaw sumunod dyan, ayaw naglalabag sa batas, hahampasin mo. Sasampalin mo, hanggang matuto. Well, that's strong arm rule. So, what do? Do we stay with our democracy, or do we go ahead?
Ikaw.
America is not a solution, because America is in turmoil as well.
You're the guy who has lived for a long time in San Diego.
I thought you were going to stop there. I mean, you're going to say, gee, how old is Bert?
I was thinking, in order to get some sense of proportion in our discussion is for you, Harry and Gil, what is it exactly is the overarching basis of a perception whether the elections are honest and credible? So, in that connection, what is your premise for analyzing?
But before we go through the analysis of before we even criticize the election process, here is a situation brought about by Vice Governor Marisa, saying that even before we go into the contest, it's already mulled with fraud. The fraud which is illegal, which it cannot be controlled because really it's a question of what you call culture. The people are being bought. That's one part. But there are people who are accepting and they're being sold. When you have a situation like that, as you well know, demand and supply, there's a requirement. So, Marisa has also identified the reason for why maybe they are like that. Why? Because media is not, well, it doesn't traverse, hindi kaya, hindi umaabot ang electronic media, hindi umaabot. And why spend 20 pesos a day on newspapers when you can buy food? Although they're living, they're not really starving per se because the fruits of the land, as you well know, God gave us the best country in the world. Diba? Okay. Everything survives and lives in this country. Maybe that's the problem. If we had snow in 4 seasons and you're forced to be more, hindi ka na magiging indolent. Kasi dito, wala kang pera, wala kang miski bobo ka, hindi ka pa rin mamamatay. Pero kung ang lupa mo ayaw tumubo, naku, tingnan natin kung hindi ka kumayod. Kung hindi mamamatay ka eh. Ang problema, ang Pilipino hindi eh. Relax. Worse, there's degradation. That which feeds him, binababoy niya pa. But that's already kulang sa education. But then again, it's a culture. So even before we go, in this case, in this electoral fraud that's being put in front of us, I think it's more of a culture problem.
Okay, needless to say, our conclusion is so far, as far as her experience is concerned, is that there was no credible and honest elections in her province because of the alleged cheating,
yes,
i.e. vote
yes,
buying.
the answer is definitely yes.
That happened. Yeah, okay.
No. But it has nothing to do with the actual count though and the new concept of what you call electronic. Right. Bago umabot dun, nabentahan na eh. Kasi actually, how we're going to unravel what Teddy Boy Locsin is trying to do with his complaints, it's a mystery to me because either way, whatever consequence comes out is going to be bad for the country if you think about it. So I don't even know why they're doing that because delikado yan. Are you going to tell me pababain natin si Noynoy? Sabihin mo sa akin, yung mga nanalo na senador, hindi na, tanggalin natin yung sumpa nyo, hindi na pwede. So I don't understand why JC de los Reyes has come out and Chipeco and some other people and said, I take back conceding to the presidency and vice presidency. I mean, come on, what do you want to do? So, okay, well, then let's extend GMA. Kung ganon, then is everybody happy? O, hindi rin pala.
Okay. Predictably, I believe this is what's going to happen. The COMELEC will say, no, we had a legitimate election. In some cases...
Well, that came with the word, son of a bitch. That's exactly what came out on TV.
Yes.
Hindi, pwede na eh. Kaya lang, wala akong mandato. Kaya dapat may blip ako. Kasi if I have a mandate, and I'm a congressman, pwede ko pala sabihin yun.
Kaya ngayon, ang mangyayari dyan is this. I can foresee it. Congress will say, hindi, sabi ng PPCRB, the fraud are isolated cases. You see. But there was a successful election. And the election is credible. Sinabi na nga yan, it's an official statement.
Kinarga na ng media. Tayo lang naman ang lumaban dyan eh.
Correct.
But now, bumabaliktad. Lumalabas yung katotohanan, magulo ngayon.
Yes.
Problem is, ano yung consequence ng gulo na yan? Yan ang delikado.
Sabi ko, ang consequence ng ganito, sasabihin ng COMELEC, no. We are the only agency qualified, mandated to say whether the election was credible or not. And they are saying it is.
And there's an objective basis for that. Congress cannot, has to proclaim Aquino
based
and
on,
even the Vice President based on a mathematical consistency.
Yes. Now,
that's objective. They cannot take it back or deny that.
That's what's going to happen. And COMELEC will say, and I believe those members of the so-called Presidential and Vice Presidential Electoral Commission, which is members of Congress, meeting together for the proclamation, we go ahead and proclaim.
Right.
But there will be isolated cases